I am so excited for you all to join me today because you're in for a treat. I'm here with Mita Mallick, who I think we met on LinkedIn, right? Randomly.
We did during the pandemic. You had me come and do a panel virtually.
Yeah. And so I think I just cold reached out and she responded, and we have become fast friends as well, which is a treat. I want to brag a little bit about Mita for a second before we jump in. She is on a mission to fix broken workplaces. She has decades of experience transforming businesses and now bad bosses. She's a marketing and HR executive, worked at many companies that you have heard of and engaged with, bought products from Canva, Unilever, Avon, Johnson and Johnson, and she is a best-selling author. Her books have appeared in the Wall Street Journal bestseller, has been an LA Times bestseller, USA Today bestseller. Her first book, Reimagining Inclusion, she keynoted one of our conferences as well, is still really topical, impactful, and important. She is a top voice on social media, teaching courses on LinkedIn, writing in Fast Company, Entrepreneur, other rags, trade rags, and presenting a chief. So Mita, thank you for being with us.
Oh, thank you for having me back. I'm really excited for our conversation today.
Great. Now, we've all had bad bosses, right? Hopefully we aren't going to become one. But in your opinion, this is a word cloud. So one word, what is the worst boss behavior that you have experienced? Hopefully not that you have performed, but that you have unfortunately been the victim of. Sarcasm. Ooh, nice and big. Yes. Micromanagement. Hate that one as well. Disrespect. Condescending. Vindictive. Oh my gosh, Mita, like you wrote this book. This is exactly what we're going to be talking about.
Wow, I'm like flipping through the pages of the book really fast in my head as I'm looking at these words.
Disrespectful, toxic, gaslighting, condescending, disrespectful, micromanaging. I think you have a chapter on each of these, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, mean-spirited liar. I saw sexism pop up. Yeah.
Yep.
Like, wow.
So interesting. There's a saying, you don't leave a job, you leave a manager. You leave a boss, you leave the person. So I'm going to put this down. This is great because we're going to talk about all of this and so much more. So Mita, your first book was a Wall Street Journal bestseller. What inspired you to write this book? Why did you feel like you had to do it?
Well, I had more books in me, have more stories to tell. I had shared with Lisa the genesis of this book starts with my mother's home being flooded and destroyed in New England a few years ago. Her home is back and she's happy in it. But anyone who's been in a home that's been ravaged by water or fire, it's devastating. And so I remember being in my soaked childhood bedroom in the closet trying to save things. I held on to Barbies, Lisa, that I thought would be worth something. They were all soaked. Thought they would make their way on eBay. I had drawings from like the second grade, all these things you hold on to. And I had a notebook in my 20s and that I stumbled across. And Lisa knows this because she's been with me in quite a few events and we've hung out. I always have a notebook wherever I am. It's in my bag. I like to just write down things and observe things. So a notebook from my 20s where I had very detailed descriptions of a couple of bosses. I had nicknamed them. They were vignettes and stories and things they said and did to me. So when I'm looking at the word cloud and all those words, I'm like, yep, all these things that were happening at that time. And it brought back all these memories. And I was driving away with my mother from, her soaked home. And I thought to myself, well, what if I'm in someone's notebook? What if someone wrote me down as micromanaging Mita? What if someone wrote me down as Maleficent? And so that was the genesis of thinking about, well, it's like a Mean Girls burn book moment. It's very easy to say that, like, you're the bad boss. It's not me, it's you. And then to say, well, actually, I've been a bad boss and chances are so have you. And that's the opening lines of the book. But that's really how the book came about, was finding that journal from my 20s. As I kept a lot of career journals, but finding that and reading it, and you're like, wow, I was feeling all this then. Powerful.
No, it's amazing. And the title, The Devil Emails at Midnight. And that got me jarring because I do send emails out all the time, but I intentionally put in there, I'm sending this at a time that
Yeah.
works for me. Please respond. And my team knows that I really don't expect
You're
them
like
to
one of the
respond.
few people I know that do that who I don't work with on a day-to-day basis. I know that about your signature.
And that's really intentional. But I love this, what good leaders can learn from bad bosses. So not only what can we learn, but how do we not become one
Yes, absolutely.
ourselves?
Yes.
Amazing. Okay. So you say in the book that bad bosses are made and products of our environments.
Yeah.
Totally agree. We've all had bond bosses, and like you said, unfortunately, we probably become them. I love all the personas, not the behaviors that you identified. It actually reminds me possibly of naming some people I might have had relationships with back before I
Ex-boyfriends,
got
girlfriends,
married.
partners. Yeah.
Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe I have some really interesting names I came up with.
Yes.
We're not going to talk about those, but I want to focus on a couple of these.
Sure.
Um, the devil, the chopper, and the white rabbit.
Oh,
So
wow. Okay.
let's start with the devil.
Sure.
Explain, who this is, why they're acting this way, and then let's get into how do you deal with this devil.
So Lisa has read and studied my book. Thank you, Lisa. If you haven't read the book, and I hope you will, I will take a step back and tell you there's 13 archetypes, and I nicknamed every bad boss except for myself. You'll read that in chapter 13. But I did that because exactly what you said. Sometimes, whether it's ex-friends or partners or ex-boyfriends, girlfriends, bosses, we nickname people to create some kind of emotional distance from them. It's easy to name someone a Disney villain or a Marvel character. It's harder to say, hey, we've behaved badly too. Like, how would that feel if someone did that to us and nicknamed us? So those are many of the nicknames you'll see. The devil is the opening chapter. I was so excited to work for her, Lisa. The feeling was not mutual. Like, I was so excited to be working for her, and she just did not have time for me, except at midnight. She would dump her inbox out between the hours of like 10 a.m. to 2 a.m. routinely. She would never spend any time with me in the office. I was like the golden retriever. I would chase her around the office, like just wanting time with her. And I still remember this. I chased her out into the parking lot one time trying to catch her. She was like, that's how desperate. I was like, can I find her in the cafeteria? Like, I just want time with her. Had time for me at midnight, constantly sending me notes. This invoice needs to be paid. Can you get this proposal together? And it's a story of the number one complaint we have in any relationships, which is time is the most precious commodity. It's the most precious commodity we have. And if you're leading teams and you don't have time for your teams, you have to ask yourself why you're leading. And I'm not saying that you need to give me 2 hours a day, but I'm saying over the course of a month, if you haven't met with your team at least a few times or individuals, then it's like, do you really want this job? Like, what's going on in the environment? And I'll turn it back over to you in a second because I know you said you had like a reaction to the title. Some people are like turned off by the title. And some people are intrigued by the title, but that's marketing 101. I hope people are intrigued enough. I've been the devil who emails at midnight. I have, right? And so that's the whole point of the book and the journey.
But I think it's really important. And I think what you said is if you don't have time for your team, you shouldn't be leading the team. And so what do you do if you work for someone that, and by the way, nobody is so self-important they can't mentor and train their people, because my whole view is if you can't develop your people to replace you, you can't do anything else. You're not going to be able to move on.
That's the number one job of a leader is to create more leaders. That's our jobs, right?
So what do we do if we're stuck with that boss that I have to like patter around to try to make sure I can get 5 minutes with? How do I manage that person? How do I manage up?
And this is the thing I never wanted to hear in my career is that we all have to manage our bosses. You have to, on some level, manage your boss. So the question is, in what way can you approach them? If it was my situation, which was so extreme and she had a reputation, then you might have to think about what's the expiration date? How long are you going to work for this person before you try to make a move internally or externally? You could approach the person like if it was Mita. I'll make myself the bad boss. Mita, I'd love to create an opportunity for us to check in on a regular basis. Do Wednesdays at 9 work for you? I notice you've been canceling our one-on-ones lately. I know you're really busy with this project. What's the best way? What's the best time of day for us to be able to connect on some of the projects and key initiatives rather than saying, You don't make time for me, which is what we want to say, which I might say to my husband, but I won't say to my boss, right? And so it's like, how do you actually act as a mirror and say, here's what I'm observing? What are the ways you would like to keep in touch, Mita? Do you want to have one-on-ones once a week, twice, once every 2 weeks, once a month? How do we start a Google Doc? How do we keep in contact on some of the things we're working on? And I think if you approach it that way and see what the feedback is, sometimes people are, I've been guilty, you keep canceling the one-on-ones and then you've never rescheduled them and 2 months have gone by and I'm embarrassed. And someone comes to me and says, we haven't met in two. And I'm like, wow, thank you for letting me know. I need to get my calendar straight.
Yeah, I think that's really important, and figuring out how you can get that time, because if you're not getting that time, you're not going to be able to perform well. You're not going to be able to add value to the
Yeah.
company and even make your manager look good,
Yeah.
which is going to be reflective of you.
And for the leaders, I know so many people are joined in. For the leaders joining in, it's like think about I think about my calendar like my wardrobe. It's like, think about the things you use, you need to recycle, you need to regift, you need to make room. There are so many meetings that we don't need to be in, that we're not delegating, that we're not canceling. And I'm not saying then you cancel your whole day and do nothing. I'm saying, are you allowing time for people to actually do work at work? And then are you allowing time to like sit down and coach someone? Or just check in on them, how they're doing. Can you be supportive? Can you help? And so when people say they don't have time, I challenge that. And I think particularly with the race to embrace AI and so much that we're going to see continue to be automated and scaled, you have time to lean into being more human and to connect with people and coach them and teach them some of the most essential skills they'll need in the
I
next phase of
completely
their career. Yeah.
Completely agreed. And we've looked at in the skills that we've identified actually from caregiving,
Yes.
but that women tend to exhibit even more than men, the communal, the collaboration. Those are the skills that are not replaceable by AI. We call them soft skills, but they're the hardest to develop. And so I like to call them managerial.
Yes, I love that.
Okay, this next, so I think I'm pretty good at making time for my team. And whenever anyone says they're so busy, I'm like, look at my calendar. I challenge you to be busier. This next one, I think I've been accused of. And
Okay.
so this one hit me hard, the chopper.
Oh, okay. The chopper. The chopper is a riff off the helicopter parent, which I have been. If anyone who's been a parent might be able to relate to that. It's the helicopter boss, which we saw the rise of in the pandemic. And I think that there are still many helicopter bosses who are hovering around. This was the boss. God, Lisa, he loved doing our jobs more than his own. It brought him so much joy to do our jobs. And he would just like hover around the office on Slack, on constantly watching and monitoring, but also wanting to jump in and do our jobs. And I just told you all earlier, my worst habit is micromanaging. And yet, I hate being micromanaged. There's nothing like micromanaging to squeeze the joy out of work. And so, Lisa, people will challenge me and say, but I have to micromanage. And I'm like, well, there's a difference between micromanaging and holding people accountable. Those are two different things that I think we sometimes think of synonymously. My biggest plea to leaders is to please, please, please don't hire talented individuals and do their jobs for them. There's nothing that is more soul crushing than that. I mean, there's many, many other behaviors talk about like it's like, oh my God, then why did you hire me if you just want to do my job? And I know, Lisa, you have a perspective on this from the research you all do, but it's like I watch this happen, particularly when people go from individual contributors to leading
Yeah.
people for the first time, doing to directing. Because I don't know about you, the first time I became a leader of people, it was finally got upgraded from a cubicle to like kind of an office and a title, more money, and here's like a gaggle of people to oversee. I'm like, is there a manual? Is there
No,
coaching? Nothing, nothing, nothing. And they just, our workplaces are broken in this way where we assume that individual expertise means that you can that teach that expertise to other people. And that's not always true. And that's when I see so many people fall into the chopper category. And I've been guilty of that too, the first time I was promoted.
no, I think you're right. And so much of our focus here at the center is in that mid-level
Yeah.
area. And that's the hardest time because you're so used to doing. And then all of a sudden you're supposed to be advising. And it's a tough switch
It
because
is.
you feel guilty that you didn't do the work. But that's the whole point because now you have a purview that's so much broader. You can't possibly do it. But it's a tough mindset to have. And then I know the other mindset that some of us have, some of us, um, I'm just really fast. And so
I
I could
believe.
just get it done faster. And so if I have to explain it and then do it, you know what? It's taken me so much more time. But what I think we really have to get in our mindset is if we take the time to sit and do it together and explain it, then we don't have to do it the next time. And
Exactly.
then you can do it.
I think also you brought up an interesting point about the going from doing to directing. We derive our value in a different way then. So
Right.
when you're an individual contributor, I love a good list. I can list all the things I'm getting done and I feel good about it. But in when I'm leading teams, I'm actually teaching Lisa how to do it. I didn't actually create that output. There's a different value. And you have to
Right.
switch that mindset that I don't necessarily have a list of output anymore, like this to-do list. I'm teaching other people how to do it, and that becomes really hard. And many people struggle with that. It's so fascinating. I've been there as well. And then the last thing I'll say, I love the I'll do it faster. I advise leaders, if there is something that you can just do faster, tell your team why and do it. If you can't teach it, I'll give you an example. I was in the beauty world for years, notorious micromanager when it came to like images for decks. I had a certain aesthetic. Am I going to spend Am I going to have my team spend hours trying to find images of things only to replace it? Versus, you know what? We've got 10 slides to work on. I'm going to tackle this first one, and here's why. I have something really particular in my mind that I can't describe to you all. When you see it, maybe it'll help for the future, but I'm just going to take this on. But I've explained it rather than redoing their work and making them feel like, I can't believe I spent hours and she didn't like this picture that I found.
I think that's really important. Now, how do I deal with these choppers?
Well, I will go back to the technique I like to use, which is mirroring. And my team did this to me, and I include this in the Devil Emails in Midnight when I was a notorious micromanager. And you can do the same thing. Let's say your boss has micromanaged you on something. The best way to do this is I say retrospective, not necessarily in the moment. That's not going to land as well. But Lisa, I wanted to sit down with you and review the client proposal that was submitted last Friday. I noticed that you changed the introduction to the paragraph. I noticed that you changed the colors in the graph. I noticed that you changed the font size here. Lisa doesn't do that. I've done that. But you see what I'm saying? I'm
I might have
asking
done
these
that.
open-ended questions where then Lisa's like, has to then ask, can you help me understand for the future what's important? And if Lisa has some amount of self-awareness, Lisa has a lot, she's going to say, wow, yeah, that was just me getting into details. Next time, I'm going to be upfront about the things I expect. Many of us are working at large companies where there are formats or templates, or even at mid-sized, smaller companies. There's ways that a CEO or a founder or a CFO wants to see things. Okay, but then just tell your team that, right? So they're not creating this person likes things in Times Roman font 14 or whatever. That's the font for the company. Okay, great. We'll just adjust to that. Right? I think people can appreciate those guardrails and guidelines if they have them up front.
No, I think that's really good advice. I like the mirroring. Now, what if somebody's kind of dense and they need to be, they just don't get it. They're not seeing the mirror.
Hmm. So in that case, listen, there are power dynamics. So I'm never gonna say to someone, go and tell your boss they're micromanaging. That's not gonna land well. But
Right.
if you know your boss's peer or you have relationships in the organization, I could go and sit with Jake as a colleague and say, Jake, I know you've worked with Lisa for a while. She's my boss. I really enjoy working for her. And here are some areas of opportunity in terms of our relationship. And I'd love some advice on how to work with Lisa in a way where we can be the most productive and effective. So I'm not going to complain about Lisa. I'm just going
Right.
to say, like, I enjoy working for her. And then you know what? Jake might be like, oh yeah, Lisa's a micromanager. Sometimes you just need to knock on the door and then people swing it open, right? If you're just like, and then he'll be like, this is what I've done. Let me talk to her. So think about if there are other allies in the organization that you can get to try to get some insight into how you're behaving. Also, you can set up better processes as a team. So if there is a lot of micromanagement happening on, say, I'll go back to the client proposals, and every time Lisa comes and redlines them, you're having a team meeting, you can propose an agenda topic. We have a lot of client proposals going out in Q4. Um, I wanted to go through the format and kind of actually look at the last few ones because there was a lot of edits and changes, and I think we can make this process better in the future. So I'm actually including the whole team because Lisa micromanaging me is probably happening to other people on the team as well.
I love that. I also love how you suggest going to somebody else. One, because if it's a massive problem, then one, at least you know you're validated, which is always nice, right? But then on top of that, somebody else who's on the outside might have a different perspective of how to handle it. And so leverage your friends and leverage.
And I'll also say, no, I love that addition that you just said. And I'll also say that we don't want to present this as being gossiping, right? We're going to ask for feedback, advice, coaching. But also, I'll just say this, there have been moments where I thought I was being micromanaged in my career, and it was really that the boss had like a high standard of excellence that he wasn't communicating. And I learned a lot from it. And
Great
so that other person, as you're saying, they could give you a different view and be like, I think this is Lisa's goal. And I think she's not explaining it to you the way that you
is
should.
resonating.
They're like, oh, interesting. So there's that as well.
So I think that's a really good point too, because our perception is our reality, but it's only our perception. And so there could be a situation where maybe there are mistakes getting made and there's a reason why you might view it as micromanaging, but if there are constantly mistakes, then it's just getting the information correct. Okay, moving on. Next one. The white rabbit. Tell us the genesis of this, of what it means, and then who is this? Why do they act this way?
So Alice in Wonderland, a childhood fairy tale favorite of mine. White Rabbit is a very famous character who always runs around with an oversized clock saying late, late, very late for an important date, late to see the queen. And it's just like always like a frenzy when you see this character. And this was my boss at one point in my career, the White Rabbit. She loved creating fire drills and bottlenecks. And I remember, I still have images of this individual just like running into the office, phones on speaker, people rushing behind her, like trying to get time with her. Everything was a fire drill. And when everything is urgent, nothing is urgent. And it reminds me years ago when I used to live in Manhattan in like one of those nondescript tall buildings, right? And I remember being on a very high floor and the fire alarm would go off. And you'd be like, oh my God. And so the first time everyone's like, fire,
And
run
then it goes off
downstairs, right?
immediately.
Especially if you've lived in um, New York City and just the times we're in, your people are anxious and nervous. Like, okay, we want to be safe. We want to leave the building. Okay, but imagine the first time they tell you, oh, it was a malfunction. Don't worry. Sorry, it was a malfunction, right? And then it happens second time, it's a malfunction. And this would happen in this building. The fire alarm would go off. We'd all be numb to it. We'd just sit in our apartments because you've told us how many times it's gone off. It's a malfunction. And this is what's happening in the workplaces. So the boss creates a fire drill. They cry wolf so many times when there's actually something urgent. And this happens in The Devil Emails at Midnight. Something actually urgent comes up and she can't get anyone to show up to do the work because the entire time she's been like chicken with her head cut off, running around, trying to create this, veneer of busyness. Sort of busy, busy, busy.
Totally. Growing up, not growing up, when my kids were younger, we said it was the boy who cried dinosaur to
I
believe
love
you.
that. I love that.
Because I have two boys and it was all about dinosaurs. But I think you've just described not everybody, but the senior investment banker role. So I had two stints of investment banking, one after college, one after grad school. And when you get promoted, and it's a little different now, I did this 30 years ago, but when you got promoted because you were an awesome banker. You were great at doing transactions. You were great at valuing companies, not because you were a great manager. And there was literally zero training. And so part of it was learning how to manage your own workload, but you'd be meeting with clients. And then at 5 o'clock, the managing director would go to us analysts and associates and say, okay, we need this. We have a meeting tomorrow at 8 a.m. I need this done. And so we'd be working all night, and everything was a fire drill, and it was always a fire drill. And it just created so much exhaustion. And so in that, I'm even looking back, I don't think there was a way I could have managed it. That was unfortunately the way that it was. But in environments where you can, how do you manage that? Because you also say in the book, there actually was a crisis and everybody was like, it's just the fire alarm malfunctioning.
Yeah.
And nobody was there to do the work.
And so I think the way to manage up to a white rabbit, a boss who acts like this, is to say, Mita, you gave me these 3 priorities yesterday that are due today at 5, and now there's another 2 due at 5. Like, what's important? Help me understand. And if you can get back to this person and say, like, the character of the white rabbit will continue to treat everything as urgent and dump things on you. So unfortunately, you need to manage up and prioritize. And even I would take it a step further to say, now we have these 5 things due Friday at 5 p.m. I'm going to be able to deliver 2 of those things next Thursday. Like, to almost push back and reset the deadlines, because this person has no sense. They think everything is urgent. And they also derive their value as a boss from staying super, super busy. Like, that's how they stay relevant. So if they run around acting like everything's on fire, they want to manage up to leadership to say, okay, this person's valuable. They take things really seriously. Or, like, actually, as you said, they're burning out the team. They're burning out the entire team by their behavior.
No, that's helpful. We have a question here that somebody asked. Do you think bad bosses hire and work with good leaders, and that's their strength? That's why they get away with being bad bosses, because they've surrounded themselves with folks that are much better than them.
That's a great question. I think one of the number one things I continue to see is personal relationships in the workplace that keep bad bosses. So I'll give an example. Like, Lisa's the CEO, I'm the CMO, I'm behaving badly. 5 women have left my team in the last month. There's just a trail of bodies. The numbers are there on the turnover. The feedback is there. And the head of HR goes to Lisa and says, we need to talk about helping me to move on. Like, this is an area like this, like, look at all the data I have. And Lisa says, oh, but we went to business school together. And our husbands are friends, and we played lacrosse at Stanford, and we summer in the same town, and our kids are, and the personal relationship. Like, Lisa is so blinded by me, she can't see it. That's not the Mita I know. And she'll sacrifice a lot of her own personal capital to keep me. I see this happen over and over again. And I'll coach Lisa to say, but can we help Mita move on to what she's meant to do next? It's not here anymore. And also, Mita doesn't need another executive coach. She needs therapy. I'm gonna say that, right? Like, when I see people acting like that, and I'm talking about some of the really egregious bad behaviors, you're like, yeah, I think there's that. I think managing up, bad bosses are exceptional at managing up, and also like creating distance from their team, from their boss's boss, so people might not know what's happening. And then I think what you said was interesting about your investment banking experience. I say in the book, bad bosses aren't born, they're made. I think that bad bosses can be made at any time. I think some industries are exceptional at creating bad bosses. I might argue, I mean, you would know better because you did investment banking. I've never done it before, but from my husband having spent time in banking and other friends as well, it seems like it's an industry where that was once acceptable. Industries like Hollywood, big beauty brands, right? Where you think, well, if you don't want this job, Mita, and you don't want to tolerate this behavior and the way we treat you, we've got 10 people lined up.
That actually was said to my husband. He had worked not close to an all-nighter, and then he was tired and wanted to go home afterwards, and they needed something done. And his boss said, well, we just had a bunch of layoffs, so I've got a whole bunch of people who would love to come back in. I do think that is changing in banking. So I do want to say this. I'm also a finance professor, and I want my students to have very successful careers. But I do think it's changing for the better. And I think Gen Z is really pushing us to be more holistic about our
I think
workplaces.
it's changing in law firms. Like you think about, a lot of industries that might have gotten a bad rap for this behavior. I think they're all being disrupted in different ways. And I think
Totally.
the new generation is helping with that entering the workforce.
Agreed. Okay, let's talk about burnout for a second. You encourage leaders to ask their people what would need to change to get excited about work again. I
Mm.
love the question because when most of us start a job, it's like the honeymoon phase, right? We're full of excitement, we're
Yeah.
optimistic, we're energetic, but then that fades. Can we continue to keep up that motivation and not burn ourselves out?
Well, I wish we had the courage to ask each other this question more. Because usually what happens, at least in my career, I'm complete in this assignment, but I continue to stay on for all kinds of reasons. And because I feel like I'm not adding value, I feel like no one's giving me credit for my work, I feel like I have no career path. All those things start to slip away, chip away at you and start to add to burnout. And so if my boss Lisa came to me and said, like, I know you're up for promotion. I know you've done this for 3 years. How are you feeling? How can I help? What would it take for you to get excited to be here again? Like, what else can I be adding to your plate, not adding to your plate, making sure that there are assignments that you're going to get value out of until we get to that promotion opportunity. And here's honestly what's happening in the org. Like those are the questions I wish we would have. And if someone is really disengaged, and I've been there, I've been in that downward spiral, when it starts and you're just like, I hate this place and da, da, da. And like you show up to work, but like you're complaining to everyone else, sometimes to your colleagues, but everyone else outside, in your family knows how much you hate it. It's like, in those moments, it's like, did someone ever come to me and say, what would it take for you to be happy again and recommit to this job? Because if you can't, being disengaged is actually super contagious and one of the worst things that can spread in an organization. And disengagement leads to burnout really quickly.
No, I agree. And I get to the point where I'm done. And then I'm gonna go. And there's nothing
Yes,
you can say that
yes,
gets me
yes.
back to that, which is tough. Now, okay, introspectively, because we're not perfect and we've all had our bad boss moments. You and I talked about them a little bit. Um, and we're scared of being that bad boss. What would you recommend that we do from a self-reflection standpoint to make sure that we aren't one of these 12 archetypes
Yeah.
that you've identified?
There's more than 12. I just had room for 12. So you'll read the book and you'll be like, she didn't include this. She didn't include that. Yes, that's all true. It starts with self-awareness. And I wish we would hone that more as individuals. And so, what do I mean by that? Most of us know when we've behaved badly. This book is not for the bosses who've wreaked havoc and harm, made headlines, and are somewhere else in the world seeking redemption. This is for the rest of us. If I asked myself, I just was rude to Lisa, I hung up on her. I just snapped at someone on my team. I just yelled at a supplier for something. Like most of us afterwards will know we behaved badly. And so the question is, are you ready to sit in that? Are you ready to sit in the silence and ask yourself why you behaved? Like what was the root cause? And so a simple exercise is at the end of every week for 15 minutes. If you like Notion, if you like a journal like I do, like there's so many tools where you can be capturing notes and just to say, don't think about the actual work, but how did you feel about work this week? Like what comes up for you when you think about the week, the highs and the lows, and like how you felt or how you think people might have felt. That's really interesting too. The other thing I'll say is if you're walking into meetings and people seem suddenly quiet around you, they, in the case of my bad boss Medusa, who we will not talk about, and I hope you'll read in the book, but people would see her walking down the hall and they'd walk the other way. Like those are all signs. If your people are scared or anxious or quiet around you, or you're the last to know about things happening at work, all signs. And so the question is, are you developing that enough to watch yourself? And I would say, as I said before, micromanagement is my bad boss behavior that can go like this. I can make it a positive and say, I'm going to hold people accountable and talk to them about the standards I expect, or I'm going to get into the details and redo all your work. And that happens in moments of stress, right? That's when that behavior for me shows up. And so we have to know that behavior and watch for it.
Yeah, I think the self-reflection, it's hard. It's scary,
It is.
right? It's tough. We got a couple questions in the chat, one talking about the nonprofit space. And
Oh, yes.
yeah, it's hard because you're not paid with money. You're constantly proving how committed you are to this cause. And at some point, you have to have something else because what is it? We don't want to live to work. We want to work
Yes.
to live
Yeah.
as well. And when our passion and our purpose is our profession, that becomes much harder to be
Yes.
intertwined. Another one here, heard things from, I do not have to manage you because you manage yourself.
Oh God.
Um, yes, I think there are companies providing, and you can talk to this more than I can, manager training now. But there's still people that are promoted because they're awesome
Yeah.
doers.
I think the world's changed. I mean, there's my book, there's podcasts, there's trainings, there's so much. It's whether the company or not, how does it value leadership? That's what it comes down to. Meaning
Yes.
that imagine if we had dashboards and metrics where Mita was not, Mita was actually being held to how many people stayed on our team, how many people were promoted. She was
Yep.
being held to their engagement scores. How are they doing? How are they feeling about working for you? Rather than, oh, we just hit this number. Yeah, the number is important. We're all trying to sell something, right? So I get that. The goal is important. But the interesting thing is, we don't really measure leadership like that when it comes to performance reviews. It's usually OKRs, KPIs, and there's usually a financial target, which is important. The company cannot be successful without a financial target, but like what's behind that target? And that's what I find fascinating, that most people will not be giving that level of feedback during a performance review.
Right. And what I find interesting, we talk about this in my classes a little bit, is the financial performance is the lagging indicator. It's the result of everything that happened. And if you're just looking at the top line, if you're just looking at sales or revenue and not how much it costs you to generate that revenue,
Yes.
turnover is really, really expensive. Right. And at a certain level, you're paying a recruiter a third of the salary that you're replacing. You have the 3 to 6 months of
Yes.
build up before somebody can even do anything besides finding the bathroom. And so retention is such a key metric, not just for leadership, but for financial performance.
I wish more leaders thought the way you did, CFOs, CEOs, CHROs, if they could all get together and look at that metric. It's like, what's it costing us to hire a search firm, to
Yeah.
actually be, the recent statistic I saw is that when I leave a company, it's 2.5 times the cost to replace me for all the
Yep.
things that you said.
Yep.
Right. And so it's like, why aren't we looking at the financials from that perspective? It's so
Yeah.
fascinating.
First of all, I cannot recommend Mita's book more highly. It is such a quick read. It's actually fun. It reads like a novel. Um, but now I want you to reflect. What is something that you think you could do better as a manager? Because we are not perfect. I could stop saying I'm so busy. I know that is one thing because that stresses people out as well. But right in here, what do you think you could do better as a manager? Here, same QR code, full attention. I think that is huge. Listen more. I need to do that. What did I say? We were given 2 ears and 1 mouth. So I think that's really important. Listening to your team is critical. Explaining why you choose a task versus micromanaging, the why, what you can do to help and be available, not on devices. That is a huge thing. By the way, that's a huge role modeling at home. We had a rule growing up with my kids when they were little, no phones at the table. And now all of a sudden I've got older kids and a husband, and Sundays is all about fantasy. And they're at the table. I've threatened not to have dinner with my family on Sundays because they're not engaged. How can you feel supported and give feedback in the moment? I love all these. As we're seeing these, Mita, what's next for you?
Well, I hope I have a third and fourth book. I have some ideas on things I'm working on. And for now, I'm on a mission to work with companies to fix things that are broken in the workplace. But also, The Devil Emails at Midnight just launched on September 30th. It's October 17th, so it's still pretty new. So I'm still doing a lot of fireside chats and talking to people about the book. But that's what I'm on a mission to do, is to make sure that the workplace is different than for my kids and all of our kids than the one I entered.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you for being here. Thank you for telling us how not to be the devil. I just want to thank our corporate partners. We are part of a university. We're a nonprofit. We only exist because of the generosity and support from our corporate and individual partners. If you like what you heard and you want to, contribute to the cause, we'd love for you, your support. And thank you for being here. Have a fabulous weekend, everyone. Go out and buy Mita's book, The Devil Emails at Midnight. Thank you.